Rock finally hit its peak in 1985. Rock finally hit its peak in 1985. Rock finally hit its peak in 1985. Welcome to I'd Buy That for $1, a podcast about inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be rediscovered. I'm your host, Sean Hartman, and it is with heavy heart that I must announce an upcoming event I'm promoting.
Is it a funeral?
Well, kind of. Let me explain. On July 12th, I'm going to be hosting the RIP Rock and Roll event at Guaranteed Rate Field in Chicago. That's right next to the former Kaminsky Park. Everyone is invited to come, bring any record with a song claiming that rock is alive, not dead, or will never die. We're going to take all those records, pile them up, light them on fire, and finally admit that rock has officially died and that disco was always the superior genre anyways.
Cool.
But it's with a heavy heart that you announce this because you're such a big rock fan.
Well, yeah, obviously. I would. It makes too much sense for me to be the one to host and MC this event.
Are there going to be like 50-cent Long Islands there?
Yeah, we're considering that. You know, I was going to wait to announce this too, but pretty sure that we're going to get Gene Simmons down there to sing a chorus of God Gave Rock and Roll to You 69 times in a row to close out. Nice.
Wow, I had no idea I was actually on track with funeral there.
Yeah, it's time we all admit it.
Yeah.
You know, rock is dead. Let's send it off.
I'm co-host Jeremy with the red coat, like Eddie Murphy.
Okay. Makes sense. You're raw, Jeremy.
I'm raw.
Very raw. Well, I'm co-host Peter Cook, and I'm here to buy stuff. For $1, I can get all kinds of stuff. Now, you'll notice something. I have braces, so I can only buy stuff good for me.
I don't know that reference.
Okay.
Have none of you watched the heavy metal, Metalhead Teens in a Record Store 1989 video on YouTube?
I missed that one.
All right.
Is that the prequel to Heavy Metal Parking Lot?
Yeah, we'll call it that. I don't think chronologically
Okay.
that works, but we'll just say that. Yeah. And we're here today. We're trying to proclaim that rock ain't dead, Sean. You kind of threw a monkey.
No. Listen, rock is dead, but that doesn't mean we can't celebrate it in its heyday, at its absolute peak. Some might even say.
Well, yeah, good that we brought the perfect record for the occasion. Then Heavy Pettin, Rock Ain't Dead, 1985. And this is an album that we have wanted to cover. I feel like we've been talking about featuring this album since pretty much the beginning of the podcast. All three of us are super hyped on Heavy Pettin, this album in particular.
This is a big one.
And we've been wanting to feature it, but we just couldn't find a whole lot of information on it. Well,
But
yeah, we found the perfect guest who is a primary source. To my understanding, experienced things somewhat firsthand, more so through his father, who was really involved in this scene. It may be April 1st, but we ain't fooling you when we say that dialing in from Cabo Wabo, Indiana, is our guest, Rex Ferrari.
Did you guys hear that?
Fuck yeah, I heard it.
sick
Fucking
shreds.
sick, right, boys?
It was pretty fucking
Yeah.
sick, I gotta say.
Welcome.
It's pretty sick, and I think that kind of proves Rock Ain't Dead right there, but not as much as Rock Ain't Dead by Heavy Pettin. So yeah, my father, Rex Ferrari Sr. the second, was involved with a lot of the recording of this. He was a roadie for a lot of bands of this ilk at the time, and I was probably 8 or 9 in the studio with the recording of Rock Ain't Dead. So some of this I remember, some of this I was reading through Dad's journal after the safe fell on him out of that window.
Oh, I heard about that.
It was bad. It was a faulty safe, so the bottom was broken. So it really was the cartoon sort of thing where we had to get the combination and open it up to get most of them out. But yeah, I read through his journal later on and got a lot of this information here. So I think we should kick it off right away with what was, I guess, their hit single, Soul Survivor.
Yes, I'm sure most of our fans will probably be familiar with this mega hit, but we're just going to take a little time to reconnect with it with fresh ears before we dive into the story of legendary band Heavy Pettin. Thanks to this album, and honestly, primarily this song, I think we can all agree that rock finally hit its peak in 1985. And I think I speak for all of us that when I think of rock and roll, I think of this song first.
This is the first song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say
yeah,
this is...
instantly Soul Survivor just pops into my head, and go on from there. But it always starts with Heavy Pettin's Soul Survivor.
It's the apex of rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really up there with Soul Survivor by Asia and Soul Survivor by Blue Oyster Cult. It's the greatest rock songs of all time, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a well that just never dries up. Well, until now that rock is dead for all bands in general. But in 1985 and the years surrounding.
I mean, there's a lot of post-apocalyptic imagery in the song that wasn't there. And actually, Dad was in the studio recommending different things that would lead to the downfall of society. And I mean, I think that the feminist leanings in the song are really understated. Dad, before he got into being a roadie, Dad was a speechwriter for Gloria Steinem. So I think that's where a lot of my sensibilities come from personally.
See, now that makes a lot of sense. That really connects a lot of dots there for me.
Yeah. Well, the band wanted to call it Whole Survivor, and it was a totally different sort of thing, but he wanted a bit of a spin on things.
That was wise.
Well, yeah, I guess since we're starting to get into this inside scoop on the band, I'm going to start off with the first question for you here, Rex. This album features 2 songs with the word angel in the title, and many fans would consider this to be the band's most spiritual album. What do you think influenced this theme around the time of recording, since you were right there in the studio when it was happening?
I mean, I remember them trying to start their own religion around that time. And so the angel songs were kind of popping up there. I think it was for mostly tax purposes, but also, blowjobs and stuff. But they got wasted and ordered a bunch of those big tall hats that the Pope wears. And Hammy, the singer's mom, spent like 2 weeks embroidering a Heavy Pettin on the front of them. And they wrote the 2 angel songs to try to like get into the groove or like, get some of that Jim and Tammy Faye money that was big at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was the 80s. Like, yeah. I mean, being white people who amassed their wealth through deception and bad faith was pretty big at the time. I mean, that and bomber jackets, which like kind of went out of style.
Yeah.
Anyways, they eventually forgot about the whole religion thing. And they thought about changing the word angel to anal whenever it shows up, but the album was already off to the printing plant and they couldn't make it happen.
Interesting. So they were right down to the wire in the creative field, just couldn't decide what to get on there.
I mean, showbiz moves at such a pace,
Yeah. Well, it just speaks to the wide range of influences that this band really had. They put everything on the table when they were creating art like this.
I mean, you have to when you make this kind of music, as, Heavy Pettin and myself do. I mean, that's why I wear cowboy boots with cleats on the bottom, because, life you just got to dig into. And that's the way I do things.
I love that. Words to live by.
Speaking of influences, I noticed that prior to this album, Heavy Pettin was opening for Kiss and Ozzy Osbourne. Would you say that, I mean, I feel like I'm hearing it in parts. Would you say Gene Simmons left his prints on this album?
I mean, all over the place, really. Especially like vocally, Hammy's doing that sort of vocal style where it sounds like he's pumping helium up his ass. But he also got tongue surgery to look like Gene. But his insurance was pretty bad. So the only doctor he could find who could do it was this guy named Dr. T-Bird in Bettendorf, Iowa. He did the surgery while Hammy was passed out in a beanbag chair one night. He said he got his PhD in prison, which is like, pretty progressive to let him do that. He also told me, I remember as a kid, he told me that people from New Zealand have tails. All things considered, I think he did an all right job, even if vowels and the occasional case of tongue sweats kind of got to be an issue.
So was this surgery before the album then?
Yeah, like right before, they did the tour and, Hammy was, so we got to tap into this Kiss dollar. So it was the day before he had to do his vocals. He went up to see Dr. T-Bird in the Quad Cities and got that done. So that's why, if you look at the pictures on the back of the album too, and the front of the album, very early Photoshop, his jaw was replaced with Jennifer Connelly's jaw in Labyrinth.
Oh yeah, this is right around that same time.
Yeah, they had started pre-production on there, and my dad had some ins there through Bowie and the Codpiece Wholesaler.
I had a feeling that was it.
I mean, people just don't understand, the depth of work and debauchery and faith that goes into something like making sure that rock ain't dead.
A lot of heavy praying, right?
These guys are Scottish, right? They're not part of the Sunset Strip scene, even though they sound very much like a lot of that music.
They were Scottish, but there's a Sunset Strip in Scotland too. Essentially, they kind of cut their teeth at a strip club called the Screwnicorn in Scotland. You could pull up. I mean, they mostly played on Tuesday afternoons. That is when you could get like a $3 bowl of haggis and just kind of pull up to Sniffer's Row and chew on it while the girls were dancing and the band was playing. But I really kind of made them come into their own and figure out their own style.
Man, to be a fly on the wall in that room, right?
Yeah, I saw a lot of dead flies fall off the wall on that room. They were healthy when they flew in, and I was bartending there at the time. I was 12 by then.
Rock isn't dead, but all the flies are.
Yeah, it reminds me of the famous Lemmy quote where he said that, he wanted to be the band where if you moved in the grass would die in the neighbors' yards or something like that. And Heavy Pettin wanted to be the band that would kill every fly that was in the strip clubs they played, and that was their mission statement from the beginning.
Yeah, they wanted to be the band that made syphilis famous.
Yeah, well,
on the map.
History will tell if they made it happen or not. Well, from such humble beginnings, the band obviously pretty quickly rose to fame. In fact, by their first album, their debut album called Lettin' Loose, they were already working with legendary guitarist Brian May, of course, from the band Queen. However, he wasn't involved in the second album. Do you have any insight as to why he didn't produce the sophomore release?
I mean, that was actually a different Brian May.
Oh.
There was a mix-up at the label, and they sent over a guy from Jiffy Lube. Not like a guy that did oil changes, but I mean, he worked in corporate. I think he wanted to break into music production. The same thing happened to Bang Tango when they were working on Psycho Cafe. They thought they were getting Eddie Van Halen to engineer, but the label sent over a guy with the same name who like sprayed down the elephant's balls at the zoo or some stuff. But I mean, anyways, like the not Brian May from Queen did a good job, I think. It took a few days before they figured out it wasn't actually Brian May from Queen. I mean, they had the same haircut, so like I get it. But I mean, it makes sense why. I kept asking him stuff about Queen, and he just kind of like changed the subject to be about rotating tires. And I mean, the band thought it was a metaphor, so I mean, they just kept him around.
Makes sense. I mean, the name is spelled the same way, so if people want to be confused about that, I'm sure they didn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end, they just the label asked Brian May if he would be okay. The Brian May from Queen, if he would be okay putting his name on it, and he never got back, so they just said yes. So
okay, so is there any bad blood between the real Brian May and Heavy Pettin, or have they actually never even talked to each other?
They've never met.
Okay, all right. Well, that settles some stories for sure. I'm sure the fans will be happy to hear that.
I mean, the r/Heavy Pettin, the Reddit page, has debated on it a long time, and you're kind of getting exclusive.
Yeah.
Exclusive. Right here on I'd Buy That for $1.
Juicy.
A juicy exclusive.
Juicy exclusive. That was one of the strippers at the Strunicorn.
Well, shall we listen to another track from this album?
I think that would be ideal.
What's next?
Let's listen to the song Angel. They kind of spin it around in an interesting way. I think it's about fucking an angel, personally.
Interesting. Getting real personal.
Wow, that sounds like a black metal subject. Norwegian
Sure.
black metal.
Windows steaming up from the couch.
So I've heard a rumor that there's an alternate take of that song on the unreleased BBC recordings they did. Do you know, Rex, if there's any plan to release those, if those will ever see the light of day?
I mean, legally, I cannot speak on that. But I will say, if Tim Bellows, who now lives at 1789 Primrose Court in Rochester, New York, can ever pull his coke-smeared nose out of his asshole and figure out his unfinished business at Polydor, there's a shot. But again, legally, I cannot speak on that.
Well, thoughts and prayers that it happens, right?
It is a ripper, if I remember correctly. It was my alarm. We had a very primitive alarm clock that you could put songs into to wake up to. When one thing me and my dad liked to do was shoplift from Sharper Image when I was a youth. And yeah, I would wake up to that song every day for years. The BBC version.
Yeah.
Beautiful memories.
It sounded like they dropped their name in there. They said Heavy Pettin in the song.
Well, I mean, branding was important even back then. Some people have said that Heavy Pettin kind of invented modern advertising in a way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think of them less as a band and more of a lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, well, they did try to have a gathering, sort of like the Juggalos have. They tried to do their own sort of festival years later. It ended up being mostly playing at the Jones County Fair in Iowa, but it could have grown into so much more. They went on between Suzanne Vega and a Yes cover band, and it was almost a breakout moment again for them. But the pressure just kind of got to be too much, the modern world and everything.
Well, it's my understanding when they called it the Heavy Pettin Festival, they attracted the wrong crowd.
Yeah, there was a lot of furries and what have you, which is not particularly what the band was into, though they have nothing against it.
Well, Rex, I had a question that I've been dying to find out more insight on and hoping you can provide some of that. In a 2005 interview with Metal Sludge, Heavy Pettin guitarist Punky Mendoza was asked to choose which he preferred between two other people named Punky. Punky Meadows, the guitarist of the 70s glam rock band Angel, funny enough, or Punky Brewster, the 80s sitcom character. Punky Mendoza of Heavy Pettin replied that he said he preferred Punky Meadows from the band Angel because the producers of Punky Brewster stole his name. Do you know anything about that? Anything further?
Yeah, well, me and Soleil Moonfry are close in age, and we had the same casting agent. So when that show was going to come out, it was between me and her for the lead.
Soleil Moonfry was the actress who portrayed Punky Brewster, for those who don't know.
Right, yeah, and we were sort of neck and neck, and no hard feelings. But I was such a big Heavy Pettin fan, having essentially been raised by the band, that I would call myself Skunky Mendoza. Also, I smelled a bit as a child. I had a certain Parmesan and old tires musk to me.
So you called yourself, you looked up to the Punky Mendoza of Heavy Pettin, so you were Skunky Mendoza?
Yeah, and then that sort of, I would always brew the coffee in the morning for the band, so it turned into Skunky Brewster. And then as it sort of progressed, someone heard me be called that in the audition, and once they cast her, you know how showbiz can be incestuous and backstabbing.
Yeah, it's brutal out there.
And I think Punky Mendoza just kind of felt a bit slighted by the entire Moonfry family.
I see.
Now, why do you think you didn't get the role? Did you go too big in the audition?
I went method. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I was 9 and really kind of got into the precocious foster child role. I believe I stabbed someone in the audition.
Man, it's always a gamble, but you got to go big. Sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't.
I mean, it worked for De Niro.
Right, right.
I mean, my two films, Sex Ferrari and Sex Ferrari 2, Two Sex Ferraris, are currently lost media, but there has been some scuttlebutt through the electronic mail letting me know that the trailer to Sex Ferrari is potentially found.
Interesting. Still
Yeah.
no chance of unearthing those two lost classics of cinema, though.
Yeah, there was a mix up at the studio, and they took the film and they they taped Philadelphia 2 over top of and
Both
Yeah.
of them separately?
yeah, they needed a backup copy, and that's what they grabbed.
That's, one of history's great tragedies. You think of the Universal Studio fire, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, and the overdubbing of Sex Ferrari and Sex Ferrari 2, Two Sex Ferraris.
Yeah, and Philadelphia too just wasn't even much to write home about.
Hot take. Damn. Now, we all know that Heavy Pettin competed in the Eurovision competition in 1987, and it's just amazing to look back and see that they didn't instantly take it. I mean, they were heavily favorited and just knocked out early for some reason, and the question is always out there, why did they fail to connect with the Eurovision audience, and would they be more successful today? Were they just too far ahead of their time in 1987?
I mean, some people's genius just isn't recognized in their own lifetime,
But they are still alive, though, right?
Right.
So there's potentially still time for their genius to be recognized.
I mean, listen. Are you gonna tell Van Gogh how to paint? Are you gonna tell Bruce Willis how to sing the blues?
Bruce Willis, the movie actor?
Did he make movies?
The blues singer.
The blues singer.
You're talking about Bruno.
Bruno. Yeah. He was in movies.
Yeah, the famous harmonicist that occasionally acted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess, maybe he dabbled. I know more of his oral output.
Right. Well, you were deep in the business, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's some crossover there, but when I cruise down the highway of life, music rides shotgun at all times.
Love it. Well, I think that's about all the time we have. Rex, thank you so much for being here, shedding some light on this obvious classic, something that we've been meaning to talk about for so long. We've got just enough time to give you a few plugs if you got anything coming up, and then we're going to play one last song.
I had a Christmas single drop a couple months ago called Stuffed Stockings. You can check that out on Bandcamp and Spotify.
Under your given
if I
name,
can get my hands,
Rex Ferrari.
Rex Ferrari. Yeah, I mean, not Rex Ferrari the fourth. We're keeping the government out of this one. But yeah, under Rex Ferrari, you can find it on Bandcamp and Spotify. If I can get my hands on this Sex Ferrari trailer, that will hopefully be released. And I'm actually going through my old demos from decades ago and re-recording them with modern production and what have you. So essentially my debut album, Wet Behind the Ears, should be out shortly.
Wow.
Well, can't wait to take all of that in, and especially knowing your upbringing and your pedigree, coming from Heavy Pettin live in the studio back in the day. Can only imagine how good your own content will be with influences like that.
I don't like to toot my own horn, but I am the world's best rocker and 8th greatest lover.
8th greatest. Well, that's not bad. That's pretty good.
Stiff competition up there. I moved up one once B. Arthur died.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Golden.
Wow.
Great shower.
What are we leaving the people with?
I think we're going to have to go out on Throw a Party. This is a song about, the Iran-Contra situation.
Perfect.
Oh my God.
Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning into this very special edition of I'd Buy That for $1. Happy April. Fools.
Sick.
My name is co-host Peter Cook.
My name is co-host Jeremy Earls.
I'm co-host Sean.
I'm Rex Ferrari, baby.